Hello, everybody. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Cherry and I run Arachne Press. Welcome to the book launch for Rob Walton's debut poetry collection, This Poem Here. There is no interval. There'll be a Q&A at the end, and Sarah will be keeping an eye out for questions, which we invite you to put into the chat so that we can collate and answer them at the end. And you don't forget what it was you wanted to ask in the meantime. We do encourage questions. Please ask us questions. Otherwise, we're going to sit there feeling like fools. And Sarah will also be tweeting about the event as she goes, which might include screenshots. So again, if you don't want your face included, please turn off your camera. We will also be reminding you at regular intervals where you can buy the book if you didn't buy it with your ticket. Thank you, those of you who did. This is it. It's gorgeous. Dana. And we encourage you to buy it. We really do. So you can buy it from arachnepress.com/shop. So let me introduce Rob to those of you who don't know him. So Scunthorpe-born Rob Walton lives with his daughters in Whitley Bay. His poetry is published by the Emma Press, Strix, Butcher's Dog, Culture Matters, Atrium, and others, including us. His short fiction has been published in the UK, Ireland, USA, Canada, and New Zealand. And he collated the new Hartley Memorial Pathway text, which is the most wonderful project. We've got pictures of it on our website buried somewhere. Have a look. He has poetry or prose in several Arachne Press anthologies: Stations, Dusk, An Outbreak of Peace, Story Cities, and Time and Tide. And he tweets at a nice lad. I'm sure this is true too. At the start of lockdown, Rob was responding to the anxieties and absurdities of living with a government that really didn't seem to have much of an idea what it was dealing with by writing poems. Many of these extremely funny poems were written in real time and appeared on Rob's social media on the day or the day after the latest you couldn't make it up incident. This is where I spotted them, and I was responding enthusiastically and eagerly awaiting the next instalment, reading them aloud to my wife and generally cheerleading, when I gave myself a good, hard commercial shake and asked if there might be a book's worth. We were in discussion about this when Rob's dad, Frank, died of COVID, and the poems took a radical turn, delving into mourning and rage and sorrow with the same real-time, in-the-moment responses. These poems leap from laughter to crying, from celebration to tenderness. There is a reckless truth to them. And I've felt as though I've lived through these experiences alongside Rob. Of course I didn't, but the strength of the poems preserves that illusion. So this evening we've got two readers, Rob, of course, and William Teller, who is narrating the audiobook. We're doing an audiobook, folks. So excited, which will be out at the end of April. Lockdown means we can't physically get to the studio, and it turns out that remote recording, whilst possible, is much, much slower than we expected. So, which is why we aren't actually saying buy the audiobook today, but you will be able to eventually. So Rob is going to take the first set, and then there's a short set by Will, and then we'll finish with a further set from Rob. But before we do that, I'm just going to share something with you. Short detour around the screen while I find the right buttons. All right, so this is Rob's dad, and the book is dedicated to him. So I just thought we should include him. So, okay, Rob, I just get you spotlighted and me off spotlight. And then you can unmute and I will mute and we're good to go.
Thank you very much, Cherry. Okay, so good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I just put a little thing in the chat that I wasn't able to say hello personally to everybody or acknowledge where you were all from, but I have pretty much seen everybody and I do very much appreciate it. I appreciate it now all you people who have come to see and hear tonight, but I also appreciate the support of so many of you over the last year, and indeed longer in many cases. I'm going to start off with the title poem from this poem here, which is very clearly about my dad. I'm starting with this one. I'm not actually reading too many about my dad, although there are a few in the book, probably just because I wouldn't actually be able to. You would just be watching someone covered in tears and snot, which, you know, is all right sometimes on a Wednesday evening, but not every Wednesday evening. I'll start off with this poem here. Christ, if I went through all the regrets I have about my dad and the things I could and should have done, I'd write poem after book, and it would be a full collection, dissected in some online journal or some blog, and recommended to someone's 167 Twitter followers. God, if I went through all the regrets I had about my dad when I was a full-grown adult, it would make an award-avoiding pamphlet that one person would ask me to sign, and I'd spell the name wrong, even after I'd carefully asked them. Jesus, if I were to write about the fact my dad saw me in some strange pantomimes and acting the goat on other stages, and even telling so-called jokes on the boards of Kinsley Labour Club, and how I regret he never saw me reading poetry, never saw me reading poems in celebration of him and my mum, well, that would be a poem. That would be this poem here, that he'd never read, that he'd never hear. My dad saw me doing all those things and was always massively supportive of whatever I did with my life. And the things I've done with my life, which continue to do with my life, are things very far removed from things he did with his life. But there was never anything other than the greatest of love and support from both him and my mum. I'm going to move on to a poem now, which was written, I'm guessing, about 4 minutes to 2 on the 24th of April last year. I'm not actually guessing, it does actually say that under the title of the poem in the book, because lots of them, as Cherry said, were written there and then. This one was written when Trump famously came out with the idea about drinking bleach. He had a real sort of glut of particularly stupid announcements around the time. This is called, Hey Dude, Don't Diss Don's Disinfectant Facts. A dose of Dettol will hopefully settle all your ailments. Consider Kill It Bang as the cure-all thing. For COVID, for the big virus. A vial of bleach administered to each and every one of us will cure everything. What could be neater than Sainsbury's citrus bleach at 87 pence a litre? A dram of Domestos is the best loss, leave in all top pharmacies. Harpic White and Shine is simply divine and recommended by all top doctors. Duck Deep Action Gel will not make your organs swell. And finally, folks, remember, Zoflora and Jay's Fluid are boogers to rhyme. As I went through lockdown, I wrote some political stuff, some personal stuff about my family, some more whimsical stuff, a real mix of things. This one was written, I'm not actually sure of the date, but I do know that it was written after June the 9th, because June the 9th was the day of my dad's funeral. I can remember it, obviously, because it was my dad's funeral, but it's a date that's always been important to me while I've lived in the Northeast, because it's the date of the Blaydon race, which was a big thing a long time ago, and in recent times has been reincarnated as a race for runners. And I did that race quite a few times with my dad. Other members of my family have done it as well, and hopefully we'll be doing that again at some point in the future. But this one is about my daughter. I have two daughters who are both upstairs somewhere. This one is about my daughter who was 18 last year, and she came with me to the funeral. It's called Who You Are. That young woman who came with me to the funeral is who you are. I thought you were a teenager in love with her phone. That young woman who held my hand at the funeral is who you are. I thought you were a teenager in love with her phone. That young woman who cried with me at the funeral is who you are. You were all that and so much more. The next one is kind of about the drives I did over the last couple of years. In the last few years of my dad's life, he was living with Alzheimer's, as my mum is now. My mum is in a care home now. And my mum has a copy of the book. And I'm very pleased to say, when I phoned a care home a few weeks ago, they told me that she had been going around and showing people the book. So I was very, very moved and pleased by that. But I spent a fair amount of time going up and down the A19, various roads. And because of the situation my parents were in, as they were getting older and frailer, I had a lot of time thinking, and I did a lot of thinking on those roads. And I also did a lot of thinking, more specifically last year, on some of those roads and some other roads. It's called meaning. I was looking for meaning on the A1058 from Newcastle to the coast. I was looking for meaning on the A19 from the Tyne Tunnel towards home. I was looking for meaning on the A15, the old Roman road to or from Lincoln. I thought I might have found the meaning I was looking for at Caneby Corner, but it was just a shut-down transport cafe I used to drive past with my parents. Still looking for that meaning. This one is specifically about my mum and a childhood memory which came back to me last year. It's called Dilute to Taste. Returning from a Mad Dogs and Englishmen midday run, spent thinking about this and that. This being the love I have for my mum, that being the sadness I feel about not being with her. I dilute some orange squash, pour in the cold water into an inch of orange at the bottom, and that smell, for someone with a terrible sense of it, is any time 40 or 50 years ago. The smell of the squash diluted, full strength love. Now, there's one, I'm not sure, this is about my friends Sarah and Phil. I'm not actually sure if they're here tonight. I didn't see them on there. If they're not here, I know, feel free to slag them off any time. It's called Howick or Howick back. I was actually looking up last night the pronunciation. I was double checking, and I found out that there's a difference between the pronunciation given to Howick or Howick, depending on if you're one of the posh villages or one of the more down-to-earth villages. I'm calling it Howick to Craster and back. You can work out if you think I'm posh or more down-to-earth. Before the walk from Howick to Craster, or maybe after, Phil tells me he's waiting to take delivery of a bracelet that will project his phone screen onto his arm. I'm not sure I believe him. On the walk from Howick to Craster, or maybe on the way back, Sarah tells me ponies are more intelligent than horses. Is this a fact? How did they prove this? Can ponies have web pages projected onto their wrists or fetlocks or whatever you call them? On the drive back from London to Whitney Bay, my wrist vibrates. I pull into a lay-by and look down at my arm to receive my first update about the relative intelligences and gullibilities of donkeys, asses, ponies, horses, and poets. I did say the title poem, Aldi Shiraz, $3.99. I did say the title poem would be the only one. It's Australian, obviously. I did say it would be the only one I read about my dad, but this one is pretty good as well, although it doesn't actually say so. Routine. I will get up in the morning, crying, fragile, damaged, and make myself 2 cups of tea. And I'll take them back to bed and read and surf Then I will go downstairs, frying, fragile, damaged, crying. And I'll make another cup of tea, chop a banana, sort out some cereal, and go back to bed. And I'll continue doing routine things like this throughout the day. And I will continue feeling damaged, fragile, will continue crying and wish another routine for all of us. Just got 3 more in this first set, or actually I did have 3 more, but I've just remembered something. I decided in a change to the advertised bill that I would do a found poem here live, and I'll take it and explain what a found poem is. In this, a found poem is where I'm going to just choose words from 5 random pages of a book, and then they're going to be a poem. The book I'm choosing is this. It's You Grunt, I'll Groan by TV's Jackie Pallo. And I'm just going to pick 5 pages at random, see what happens. I blame that fucker Cummings. It's amazing what you can just find in poetry. It's a wonderful thing. It's a fantastic book, this. And I must actually, if I can find it. Oh, there was a fantastic photo when I flicked through yesterday. I might have to save it for the second half. You can all, oh, there you go. No, there it is. Look at that, people. Look at that. Okay. I'll put this book up for auction later. Right. This is called Like in the Olden Days, before we had Zoom and techno klutzes like me. Like in the olden days. I want my daughter's friends to come for tea. I want to serve them uninteresting pasta with a jar of Aldi tomato sauce and some veggie parmesan, and maybe, I don't know, a Coke float or an ice cream, or pretty much anything really. I just want my daughter's friends to come for tea, like in the olden days, you know, like in the olden days. The penultimate one from this set is for my friend Steve. And I'm not sure if he's there. I'm pretty sure he will be there. I've not actually seen him there tonight. He might be one day when there was a bit of a break from some of the grimmer things in the summer, although it was actually stoking up grimmer things to come. And he brought me this. It's a fantastic album, okay? It's a double album with a gatefold sleeve, okay? And you put one of the records there and one of them there. Let's see what happens, shall we? Unforgiving. Steve bikes over and hands me K-Tel's 40 super greats, 40 top 10 hits, superb 2 LP set as advertised on TV and radio, with Gary Glitter and 1 or 2 artists who will be remembered mostly for their music. What Steve doesn't tell me is that he's put record 1 at the back of the gatefold sleeve where record 2 should go. I've come across some sly tricks in my 56 years, but this takes the fucking biscuit. And to finish the first set, before Will does his sterling work, and a big thank you to Will for doing the audiobook, and for Cherry for having the wherewithal to go seek the funding for the audiobook to happen, because it's obviously a fantastic thing to happen, and I wish it did happen more. Hopefully it will happen more in the future. And also, timely point in general to thank Cherry, to thank her for the faith she's shown me in the past with the choosing of some of my work for the anthologies she mentioned, and also for following my social media, seeing what I was putting out there, and inviting me to submit more and bringing this to fruition. It's a very short one to finish this set. It's called Self-Aware. If there's one thing I'm good at doing in a crisis, it's not getting round to doing stuff in a crisis. Thanks very much for listening to the first half. I'll hand you back to Cherry now. Thank you.
Right. Hello, me again. Sorry, I'm sort of fighting with number of different things at the same time here. So the audio book. We wouldn't be doing the audio book without the help of the Arts Council, and I have to say this in the correct phrase. This is supported by public funding by the National Lottery through Arts Council England. That's the end of the public message. And we are partnering with the charity Listening Books for the production. We've worked with them once before with our first very cautious dip into audiobooks, but you need a lot of money behind you to get audiobook done successfully. So this time we're doing it really properly, and we are taking advantage of the delay in production to make sure we'll be able to sell the audiobook direct from our web shop when it's ready, which is arachnepress.com/shop. Just to remind you. William Teller, who is going to read for you next, is an actor and voiceover artist based in Manchester. He's been performing for a long time, but recently graduated from the Bridge Theatre Training School, so that qualifies him as a late starter. William has performed on stage and film and narrates audiobooks, including this poem here. He has recently turned his hand to producing and filmmaking, co-producing a showcase for older actors and creating short films. And he's represented by Kate Northern in case anybody needs to get his work. So, where have you gone, Will?
I'm still here.
I can't see. Oh, there you are.
Oh, yeah. Tucked in the corner there. Well, on my screen anyway.
There you are.
Ah, there I am. Okay to go ahead?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I was given the onerous task of choosing just 5 of these wonderful poems to actually read to you tonight. So it's been a treat to try and hone these things down into just 5. And of course, Rob chose the best ones for himself, which is understandable, really. So I've got 5 to deliver to you tonight. And I'm really quite looking forward to getting some of these done. My first choice is a nice, simple one. It has a nice, familiar ring to it. So buckle in. For one man and his dog. One man went to see a poet. One man and his dog went to see a poet. 2 men went to see a poet. 2 men, 1 man and his dog went to see a poet. 3 men went to see a poet. Sorry, I got a bit carried away there. Again, the next one, as listening to Rob describing his how he writes his prose, that most of these things come out of events that occur in his life and pretty much written as they occur. You can see that Rob's lives quite an interesting social life, and this one sort of gives me a sense of how he feels about certain aspects of the pub quiz. This one's called Last Night's Quiz. Without checking, can you remember if it was Messenger, Skype, WhatsApp, or filmed live by the ghost of Trevor McDonald's dad and Steph McGovern in your living room? Did you prefer the 3rd glass of Shiraz or the 4th? And were you remotely bothered that the tilting glass and your tilting head kept coming into shot? Did you come in the top 3? Or were you soundly beaten by 2 imaginary cousins and that sexy plumber from a suburb of Antwerp that none of you knew or invited? Was that a little bit of sick on your collar? What do you think caused the noise that stopped you from hearing the food and drink round when you were eating lime and coriander chutney poppadom sensations dipped in crushed Doritos? Will you come again? The next one, again, is one of these short ones that Rob is famous for. Really sort of punchy in there. And it has a sort of a sense of what's happened during 2020 and how we've all learned to communicate with one another. And particularly for this kind of event where lots of people watching, various people talking and so on. It's called House Beautiful. There are some weirdos out there participating in online poetry readings. And those so-called participants are actually listening to the poets instead of scrolling through and checking the expressions and clothing of the other participants and having a good nosy through their so-called living quarters. Again, this next one is I can tell is born from the frustrations that arrived in 2020 with our political comment alert here, our appalling incompetent government doing what it does. However, this poem, you can sense its frustration. Rob gave me a few little notes about how to read this when we did the audiobook, but this one you get a real sense of the frustration from 2020 as I read it. And it's called What Do You Do? What do you do if your career path is dug up for essential maintenance? What do you do if the road ahead is closed? What do you do if you see a sign that says delays possible up to 2 years? What do you do if you see the contact number of Life's Highways Department and you can't get through? What do you do if you can't get through? What do you do if you paid attention in all the driving lessons and know the highway code followed all the rules? And there's a sign that says road narrows, and yet another sign that says road narrows, and then a sign that says the lane is closed. What do you do if there's loads of members of the government in high vis on the hard shoulder giving you the finger? What do you do? Really? What the fuck do you do? My final poem tonight, before handing back to Cherry and Rob, is one that I particularly like. It's one of the later in the book, and it's got a lovely rhythm to it, and yeah, you just get into the flow of what's going. And it's called The Last Dance. Dominic's dancing in his Death Star t-shirt, smooching with Mammon, digging up the real dirt. His henchmen have got the DJ pissed, altered the algorithms on his banging playlist. He triggers with Gavin before they go to the bogs and talks about Aprenom around at Rees Moggs. Chats about Rupels and delirious Debs and pissing on the prospects of the oiks and the plebs. Here's Grant guffawing and shuffling across the floor, ignoring the commotion outside the twice-locked door. If you've got a complaint, you know where you can stick it. You can't come in here with your third-class ticket.
Okay, I'm just going to hand straight back to Rob, but before I do that, just to remind you again, arachnepress.com/shop. Rob, I'm just going to put you on Spotlight. There we go.
Thank you very much indeed, Joe. Right. Okay, back to set 2. Okay, nothing's altered here at all. The first one from this set is it's called The Class of 2020, and it was one that I wrote last year. There are a few in the book about my older daughter who turned 18 last year, and I think for people of that age, there were all sorts of things taken away from them. Yeah, my daughter Her 18th birthday itself wasn't celebrated. Her 18th birthday party was cancelled. She didn't do her A-levels. She didn't have a prom. She didn't go interrailing, on and on and on. I saw when school suddenly finished, I saw some photos she'd posted of her and her friends, and that was the impetus for this poem, The Class of 2020. I saw those Instagram photos of your improvised last day, and I saw the love between, and the sadness between, and the togetherness between, and I saw the class of young people being between this thing and another thing. I saw the dates of Lenin's reign and German verbs on your bedroom wall over the ghosts of photos of festivals and parties. I saw crossed out dates and wall chart entries, colour-coded and cancelled, and countless question marks. I saw the rug pulled and the plug pulled, and someone you didn't choose pulling people down. I saw TikTok likes and FaceTime faces on a laptop screen in a bedroom over doorstep presents and undelivered hugs. I saw real friends with pixelated laughs and smiles and very clean hands, and I saw the love between, and the sadness between, and the togetherness between, and I saw the class of 2020. Called the class of 2020 because the actions of most of those people are just so far above the actions of the people who got us into this situation. Younger children as well. I mean, I teach part-time. I teach 7 and 8 roles, and I was off work for a few months shielding. I went back roughly at the same time as the children went back after this latest lockdown. And they have been so fantastically resilient throughout all of this, as far as we can tell, although actually we don't know what is going on in their heads all the time and how things might manifest themselves down the line. But for now, they just seem to have been superb, as is my other daughter and her friends of her age. And this is more about them. It's called Applause. One day, one winter, I clapped my daughter. She ran past me in a school cross-country race. I ran across the field to clap at another point where they crossed a path, going from the public field to a lap of the high school field. Then I tried to run and film her, but I fell short. A couple of years later, I'm running on the path between the public field and the high school as students return after 6 months. I want to clap them. I want to applaud them as they stand with friends, all nervous excitement. Well, not all nervous excitement. There's probably already some boredom and a couple of vendettas, but you know, whatever. I want to clap. I want to clap. Cherry mentioned right at the beginning, he explained that because it just seems, what was he doing calling himself a nice lad? The reason I call myself a nice lad when I first went on Twitter was because of how, in certain situations, how profoundly inarticulate I am. And I used to meet with a friend of mine, a friend Matt, who can't be here tonight, and we'd talk about films, TV, books we'd read, and my comments on things that I'd got really into and really enjoyed would generally be, yeah, it was really nice. I really liked it. I couldn't really get much more than that. So my idea was to go on Twitter and whatever I saw, whatever band I saw, whatever film I saw, whatever play, I would just write a short review which just said, yeah, it was nice. Yeah, saw The Crucible. It was nice. Yeah, went to see Sufjan Stevens. It was nice. But I did that for about 3 tweets and then lost my way with it a little bit. But that explains that. Okay. This next one is called Breadhead, and I've got something to show you at the end of it. And it's also, I must say, it's very short, and it is a personal favourite for whatever reason. Tom in Aldi says the ancient grains farmhouse loaf is only 89 pence. I tell him I'm willing to pay up to 95 pence if he's got something a bit more modern and with an urban setting. And there you go. There is your Aldi ancient grains farmhouse loaf. It's all true. I'm not making any of this up. Now we're on to one called In Lockdown, and it's back to a serious one. And in lockdown, it seems perfectly reasonable to get tearful over the Jersey Royals, untouched and forgotten about in the cupboard under the sink. And now the girls have gone back to the mums. You'll have the Jersey Royals on your own, or with a bit of butter. But snide Lurpak won't help them pass the lump in your throat. I should perhaps apologise for my hair. I actually tried to have a little bit of control with my hair tonight. I've actually put some gel in it so it's not just all over the place. Ordinarily these days, it's looking like if Peter Stringfellow had a nephew who was a geography teacher from Scunthorpe, it would be like that. I apologise for any geography to any geography teachers in the audience. Okay, I really don't mean it, and I particularly apologise to anyone who has ever been taught by geography teachers. Yeah, right. This next one is called "It's a Rich Gardener's World." I do like Gardener's World. I like Monty, bloke who sometimes takes his place and did last year. It's a Rich Gardener's World. We're having a crowdfunder up our street, trying to raise funds so that one of us can buy one of the big terracotta pots Monty Don's always casually walking past on Gardener's World on a Friday night. We've got 120 contributors, so nearly halfway there. I changed, you might have noticed. It's called One of the Very Worst Things. One of the very worst things that happened to me in lockdown was the Zoom meeting where I knocked the video function off and changed my shirt, then put the video back on. I did this 7 times and no one noticed. Just got a few more to do. If you don't already have the book, I should say that Cherry is obviously selling copies, and I assigned some book plates and sent them to her the other day. I did Lady Gaga, Princess Eugenie, and Kevin Keegan. So if you want any of those, the book plates are there ready to go. This next one is called Dawning. And my friend Zoe, after she'd read it, asked me who Hilary Hahn was. And I explained to her, and this came about because sometimes when I write, I put some music on YouTube, and I tend to put stuff like Jacqueline du Pré or a little bit of Bach, Yo-Yo Ma or something like that. And through that route, I came across Hilary Hahn. I didn't know her until last year, and I started listening to her playing some violin music. And because of that, I thought I would accompany myself tonight with because I traded in the violin for 2 packets of lightly salted tortilla chips from Aldi. I think I got a bit of a bargain. It's probably best to leave that to Hilary Hahn. This is called Dawning. One November Sunday at 12:40 p.m, I realised there is no guarantee that Hilary Hahn will leave her violin, her 2 children, her husband, and her Cambridge, Massachusetts home to come and help me sort out the shelves and the punctured bike tyre in the shed in Whitley Bay. There is, it dawns on me, a chance she will not know how thickly to butter the bread for a crisp sandwich. Playing the lark ascending so exquisitely might not necessarily equip her for a half-time Guinness at Hillheads. It's obviously a blow, but better I know now before I take the key to the padlock and put enough water in the kettle for 2 mugs. If you don't know, Hillheads, which is basically where I live, it's also where the home of a Whitley Bay football club. I'm just going to do 2 more. This one Again, it's a change to the scheduled set list. This is called Fuck the Geography Teachers. It's not. I'm not doing one called that at all. Okay. There are two more. This is a political one, and I'd like to finish on one which is more personal and hopefully optimistic, but the more political one first of all. It's called Prime Minister's Questions. Are there any other countries you'd like to break? If you grow it out a bit, would you like me to cut it into a bob? Do you miss the good old days of racist newspaper columns? Is the dandruff cultivated to evoke sympathy? Will you answer the question about the inflatable Cummins? Do you understand the difference between a million and a billion? Who's your favourite bully? How about a nice lie down? Who's spaffing? Could you tell the house which of his houses your dad is in at the moment? Is it the ready brek that makes you glow inside? Have you got Brexit done? Do you miss the good old days, the zip wire and the flags? Are there any other countries you'd like to break? Quite obvious what that one's about. And it does irk me. My nieces in Germany are watching tonight, and they're about to go into a really severe lockdown again over Easter. And we're here, we, probably not the people who are involved in this tonight, but so many people just crowing about whatever, the 27 million vaccines we've got, concentrating on that, and not the fact that the Kent variant, which probably got here through our Louvre doors and back out again through our Louvre doors, which we call border control, has then had a massive effect on people in Europe and the rest of the world. But that's not our problem. On a more optimistic note, hopefully, it's called Eve's Not Dubrovnik. And the optimism in the first place, this is what my daughter and her cancelled plans, was about hoping these things would happen this year. They're probably not going to, they're definitely not going to, but hopefully next year, because we do have to have optimism. The old thing about pessimism of the intellect is entirely appropriate, but optimism of the will. And we do obviously have to be there for each other as much as possible. Always, but now more than ever. This is called Eve is Not in Dubrovnik. Eve is not in Dubrovnik. Emily is not in Gdansk. My daughter is not in Ljubljana. Sarah is not in Split. But they are with each other in gardens, in gin, in raspberry mojitos, in half-hearted limbo dancing. They are with each other in the hope next year travel might broaden the mind and narrow the savings. So Sarah will be in Split. My daughter will be in Ljubljana. Emily will be in Gdansk. And Eve will be in Dubrovnik. That's everything from me, apart from a vague willingness to answer some of your questions, if they're easy and if they concern answers which are Jimmy Lumby or Steve Cammack or other Scunthorpe United goal scorers from 1970s. Anything that's not that, I'm going to really find it very, very tricky indeed. Thank you very much for coming. It's been lovely to see you all, and I'll hand you back to Cherry now, and then we'll hopefully have a few questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Right. Let's have a whiz through the questions, and I'll read them out to you, Rob, and then you can answer them. Let's see.
Certainly.
I know there are some. Here we go, from Penny Blackburn. How do you feel when someone else reads your work?
Well, this was, I mean, I haven't actually, I made a couple of very brief comments on the chat, but I'm not, well, I haven't had the opportunity to look at the chat particularly. But I did see that one from Penny, which she posted earlier. And it's very strange, obviously, and it's very flattering. It was quite strange when I was hearing, I met Cherry and Will online and had a rehearsal just to make sure my technology would fuck up at some point. We had a rehearsal a couple of nights ago, and that was the first time I'd met Will and heard him read some of the things. And when I saw him and heard him tonight reading things, it was quite strange, the ones he was reading tonight, because there were a couple of the funny ones. And I'm looking at him reading, and I'm thinking, well, I find that quite funny. Can I laugh at that? Can I laugh or smile at the things I've written? So that is a particular one which is strange. But I'm absolutely fine about it, and I like about it. I find it interesting, and part of that is connected to that whole thing about letting go of things. I'm sure one of the reasons it took me so long to get started with the poetry malarkey is because I always used to have ideas for things and just hang on to them, just keep them to myself. Think, oh, that's my idea, I'll just keep it, and nothing will ever happen to it. But now I'm much more of a mind to let things go, you know, to put things out there. And that's indeed how Cherry came across, you know, my poems here in the first place. I didn't set out to write these for a publication. I put them on Facebook or Twitter, Instagram possibly, to share with my friends, to share with people I know, so that they could have a laugh, have a think, yeah, whatever. So putting things out there is great, and it's all about that idea of letting things go. And the whole thing about once you write something and put it out there, it belongs to the reader anyway. In this case, yeah, the reader of an audio book, and then the people who are going to listen to that. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. Although I am a little bit self-conscious, as I said, about smiling or laughing at things I might have written myself. Not to the extent I wouldn't do it, but, you know, a little bit.
Okay. And then we have one from Joe Williams. Are you looking forward to getting back to real live events? And are there any particular ones on the 26th of June that you'd like?
Well, I'm thinking that maybe on the 26th of June, say an afternoon in Hexham, which is, you know, so pretty much due west of here, I could perhaps be found in a pub with Joe and a couple of other writers entertaining the good people of Northumberland and anywhere else. So that's Saturday, the 26th of June. I can't remember the exact time. I think it's 2 or 3 in the afternoon at the County Hotel. I hope I've got that right. In Hexham, their events that Joe runs there. And I've done 1 or 2 of them before. This is a new one. It was going to be the week before, but now it's happily coincided, put it back a week so it coincides, hopefully, fingers crossed, with things opening, people still being sensible, but us being able to meet in real time. And that'd be fantastic. Obviously, this is great, meeting everybody tonight and being able to do this. And there's so many good things about these sorts of things. There's obviously so many people who, for emotional reasons, for reasons connected to the mental health, might not want to go to a live reading. People for physical reasons might not be able to go to live reading. So these things are absolutely great. I hope these continue ever, these sorts of events, but I also obviously hope live events start up again as well when it's safe to do so. So both things get a big thumbs up from me.
Okay. And then one from Martin, can't see the whole of the name, Martin Aitken.
Martin Aitken, this is my friend Martin in Denmark. Yeah.
Oh, right.
I did see that one. And
what poets are you reading these days?
What poets are you reading? What I'll do is, because I'm terrible at remembering this, I think. I actually keep a record of every book I read. I'll send Martin a personal reply to this, but I will mention one particular thing which I've just read recently. This year, I've read loads of children's poetry for one reason or another, and I picked a Michael Rosen book up the other day, which I've had for a long time. It's a book called You Wait Till I'm Older Than You. And it's for children, but it could just as well be for adults. There's a lot of story poems in there, almost sort of narrative poems, but not in the traditional sense, blank verse and so on. But they're absolutely fantastic. They're very funny. They're incredibly moving. It goes back to lots of tales about his childhood. 1 or 2 of his and lots of things about his upbringing and his parents. So there's a very old book, I think it's about 25 years old, I think, from Michael Rosen, which I've read recently. Not obviously a recent collection, but it's brilliant. I'll have a hard think, and I'll message Martin personally. I'll photocopy some pages from my book where I write down everything I've ever read, like You Grunt, I'll Groan, or Amateur Gardening, and they're all in there.
I think we should have a copy of that for the website, actually.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
It'd be weird. And a question from Elaine Cusack.
Yep.
Will you keep the Bamba Gascoigne haircut even when the barbers reopen?
Oh, it's a good question. Well, I think I've had one haircut in a year, and it's such a long. But it's like I ordinarily have very, very short hair, and it's and you know, I have the glasses, the grey hair, Bamba Gascoigne. Jeremy Paxman's been quite annoying on University Challenge. Maybe there's a career opportunity there. Maybe I'll stick with it and see what happens, see how that pans out.
Okay, and one from Ness Owen. She says, "Is a big question. What next?"
Well, that's a very good question. I write a lot. I don't always finish things. I wrote obviously quite a lot during the various stages of those earlier lockdowns, and I've still been writing a lot. I write a lot of flash fictions and a lot of poems of various sorts. I've got a ridiculous amount of things which aren't completed at the moment, which are nearly completed. I just need to get around to them. And yeah, there's absolutely loads of stuff I'm working on. One of the possible problems I have, I shouldn't complain too much, is that the ideas keep coming. I have no problem with the ideas. They come unbidden at any hour of the day or night. So there will definitely be something in one of those future spaces at some point.
That's a very diplomatic answer. A comment from Penny Blackburn. Your poems really make me laugh, but a couple of those had me on the edge of tears. I have to say,
thank you very much.
Totally there. I mean, when I'm editing, I have to read things over and over and over. I reckon a minimum of 7 times. And my rule of thumb for am I going to publish something is, will I be able to bear doing that? And with some of these, it was a completely different kind of will I be able to bear it? You know, am I just going to harden my heart and just look at the grammar, or am I just going to be sobbing into the computer?
Well, thank you very much for that, both Penny and Cherry. And I think I write now. Now I understand it all a little bit better, and I didn't used to understand it at all. Write things that I might possibly be the sorts of things that I would like to read in general, and over the course of a book. I wouldn't want to just have a load of gags, and I wouldn't want to have a load of misery necessarily either. You know, the things that are in this book are the myriad of stuff that goes on in a life, in particular my life, but all of our lives. You know, we all have all those different things going on during the course of an hour, a day, a year, whatever. So yeah, that's what comes out.
And a related question from Jeremy Dixon. How do you deal with the emotion in the poems when you're in the process of writing them?
It's a very good question. I think how it works, or how it works with those, is possibly, although I wouldn't want to over-egg it necessarily, a way of dealing with some of that emotion was getting it down, having that thought. And although obviously tonight generally has been quite light and intentionally quite light, as I mentioned right at the beginning, but I have spent, you know, a ridiculous amount of time over the last year crying, you know, on any given day. I cried today driving home in the car. I'm coming along the coast road, and I start to cry because one of the things about my dad comes in my head, and that happens a lot. And as those emotions come up, and thoughts, ideas, words come up, they start to form themselves in a particular way. So getting them down seems a way of dealing with it or representing it. So as I'm writing it, I'm recording the thoughts I've been having, more or less, and it's good to absolutely get it down on paper.
And thank you, Ness, for pointing out I'd skipped the question. One from Ziggy Dix. How long does it take you to write your poems, and how much editing do
How
you
long does it take to write poems? Well, it does vary, obviously. These ones here were, obviously enough, written very quickly because, as you mentioned before, responses to actual things. The 56 p.m. thing about the Trump talking about bleach and so on. That was written pretty much there and then. There's a number of them which are pretty much written there and then. Ideas come, get them down, a little bit of tweaking. Some of them take much longer. Obviously, none of them in this collection have taken that long, although I have other poems which I might have started writing years ago. And I will get, they'll emerge from a notebook, a piece of paper, a file, whatever, and then something else would be the little bit that makes it into the more successful poem. It might take months or years to do that. These ones here, a lot of them were written very, very quickly, as you said, there and then on the day, because some of them were responses to real live news events or things that were going on. So some of these took minutes, some of them took hours, some of them took days, but they were all obviously relatively quick.
Okay. Laura's asking a similar question, which was, do you do much editing?
Yeah, I do. I do edit, but also a lot of things do come to me. Not in this book and in others do come reasonably fully formed, and I'll often wake up with ideas, and I'll start writing or typing whatever I'm doing, or keying it on my phone, and things will follow naturally. Sometimes they will then stay there for a long time, but I do enjoy going back and editing. Editing is something I enjoy, and I think part of that is possibly or probably a result of having written quite a lot of flash fictions, very short fictions with a very limited word count, where you have to write something in 100 words or 250 words. So editing is a massive part of that. If you've got something of 108 words, you have to find the 8 words which aren't necessary and get it down. So I think those editing skills that I acquired doing that sort of writing help with the poetry as well, realizing which words aren't necessary, which words or which lines aren't going to help, and so on.
Okay, well, that is all the questions we have.
Great, thank you.
So, unless anybody's got anything else they want to add, I will just say thank you to Rob and Will. Oh, hang on. There was something else. Paul, did you make it in?
Is Paul there?
I got an email from Paul saying the link wasn't working.
Ah.
Are you there, Paul? It's like a Ouija board.
I'm not sure if he's there.
Is he there?
He's not here.
Scrolling.
He's not. No.
He's not. No.
He did appear briefly, but oh well, never mind. Paul.
Well, I would mention Paul would have explained. Paul was someone who designed the book. I don't want to say so. He designed the book cover by playing around basically with this notion of the coronavirus. I don't want to say what he could say far more articulately than me. He could probably say that word as well. But I thank Paul very much for having done that. And maybe at another event he'll be able to join us and say that. He's probably outside Oddfellows at North Shields trying to get in right now, which would be difficult because it changed its name to the Seven Stars and it's been closed for about a year. But there you go.
Okay, so thank you, Rob. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Sarah, for assisting. Just to let you know that our next planned event is the book launch for Claire Owen's debut novel, which is destined to be a young adult classic, Zed and the Cormorants. That will be on Zoom on the 29th of April at 7 o'clock, and we hope you can join us. Tickets are going incredibly fast on that one, so if you want to come, you better get in there. And I think that's probably all we have to say. So there we go. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And thank you, Cherry.